Hey, what's going on, guys? So, the NFL season is officially over. The Los Angeles Rams are Super Bowl champions. Congratulations to the Los Angeles Rams. Congrats on the Super Bowl win for the LA Rams. Congrats on the Bengals for getting there. And it's time to start fresh with a clean slate for the NFL season. And for a lot of teams, that means head coaches. New head coaches have been hired around the league, including some after the Super Bowl because they had kind of already had the job built in. But we are going to start by, I'm just going to give my thoughts on these coaching hires. I'm not going to grade them. I will say whether I think it's a good hire or not. I'm obviously not going to grade it because that's kind of like grading, like how I do my draft class grades. I'm not going to grade them until I've seen the guys play. I don't know if these guys will be any good until we actually see them coach. Like, we're not going to know how good they are till their team plays. So obviously we're going to see that, and we're going to find out just how good they are. Anyways, let's just jump into this. Let's see what I think about these coaching hires. So let's start with Matt Eberflus of the Chicago Bears. Eberflus, heard it both ways. He's been hired for the Chicago Bears, and I get it. He was hired from the Indianapolis Colts as their defensive coordinator, and the Colts had a pretty good defense. I get why he was hired, because look, for the Bears, what's been their strength the last few years? Their defense. He's been a huge part of why the Colts defense was so good, and I get it. You're playing to your strengths. You're finding out just see how good your defense can be. I understand that completely. That said, though, I do think that it is a little odd that you're, not really going with an offensive guy because you've invested a ton into Justin Fields. The Bears traded next year's first, which ended up being a top 10 pick, the 7th overall pick, to the New York Giants to get Justin Fields. And, I would understand that, you'd want to invest into your young quarterback. Now, a lot of Bears fans, from what I've seen, said they only care about who his OC is, who his quarterback coach is, and who he hires to coach that line. Because the Bears' offensive line has also been a major issue over the last few years. Drafting Tevin Jenkins was a start, but the guy got injured a lot, and he barely even played last year. So I imagine this year he'll get more of a starting role. So it could be a good hire. I'm iffy on it. I get it. You're playing to your strengths. Your strength is defense. But I would feel like, I don't know. It feels like they should have invested more in the quarterback position. I don't understand it. But that's just my opinion, and we'll find out how he does. But Eberflus, a little iffy on it. Next coaching hire I want to talk about is Kevin O'Connell of the Minnesota Vikings. He was just the Rams OC when they won the Super Bowl, and O'Connell has now been moved to head coach with the Minnesota Vikings. And I get why they got this hire. Mike Zimmer, great defensive coach. He has been there for so long. They wanted a change of pace. And I get it. Look, you got 1 year left with Kirk Cousins. They're not going to move him. You're going to try to get the most you can out of him. And I know that some people say, well, Kevin O'Connell didn't really call the plays. It was a Sean McVay thing. Look, I get it. And I addressed this in my Nathaniel Hackett video because, again, this kind of the Shanahan tree works. Once those guys become head coaches, they take more roles. But more often than not, they're kind of just collaborating, sometimes calling the plays, but collaborating with a head coach. That's kind of the case of the Shanahan tree, and now we're seeing that happen. Okay, because 3 assistants have been hired from the Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur, who are of the Shanahan tree. 3 of those assistants have been hired in the cycle, McDaniels, O'Connell, and Hackett. And so I'm okay with O'Connell being hired as the Vikings OC head coach. I know that Dalvin Cook is going to get a ton of production because that's, again, what the Shanahan offense mostly relies on. But Sean McVay has been looking to kind of move away from being the primary play caller. I've heard that in the past few years he's been a little more, I wouldn't say, what's the word for it? Relaxed with his OCs. He's letting them take a bit more control of the offense, so that does give me hope that O'Connell will have a bit more say in what happens with the Vikings. Obviously, he's the full-time play caller. I have no idea if this is going to work because, you have Kirk Cousins, you have Kellen Mond waiting in the wings if they really think Kellen Mond could be a future quarterback for them. They did draft him in the 3rd round last year. We're going to find out. I'm okay with the O'Connell hire. We'll see how it goes. And let's go to one assistant that I just mentioned earlier, Mike McDaniel to the Dolphins. Now, I know that the Flores situation is a little messy, and now I'm hearing that Stephen Ross might be forced to sell the team amid the tanking scandal, which that's a pretty damning statement if what Flores said about the tanking thing is true. That said, I get why they went with McDaniel. It is clear that Flores and Greer, the GM, Chris Greer, did not agree on this direction of the Miami Dolphins. Greer wanted Tua. Greer wanted Tua to be the team's future. Flores did not want Tua. Flores wanted somebody else. That's why he started Fitzpatrick for so long. That's why he kind of pushed for Deshaun Watson, at least if that rumor is true. It's clear that Tua Tagovailoa has been very divisive in the Dolphins organization. This hire is them going all in on him. And similar to the Hackett hire, I kind of get what they're doing here. It's understandable. You want to make Tua your franchise guy. Chris Greer clearly believes in Tua. So why not hire a guy who you think can get the most out of him? And, well, of course, you're going to the Shanahan tree. It's proven well. A lot of the assistants, if not almost all the assistants that come out of that tree, have done very well, have had a ton of success at the NFL level, especially when it comes to developing quarterbacks. So why not go to that tree? It's much better, and I get it. It's actually, in my opinion, a pretty decent hire. I like the hire of Mike McDaniel. This should be good for Tua. He appears to be excited to work with him, which Tua Tagovailoa, to be fair, hasn't had. If you know the relationship between him and Flores was very contentious, and at times understandably so. Tua is a growing quarterback. He's not going to be perfect, but Flores clearly wasn't ready for that. He was not ready for what some of the mistakes Tua would make, which is totally fine. Look, some quarterbacks, some coaches are in for a development. They get what they're in for. Some coaches aren't, and I get it. Like, Flores was on a team that was at one point on pace to be one of the worst teams in NFL history with just how bad the Dolphins were. And it's pretty telling. So, I get the McDaniel hire. You want a guy that's going to work with your quarterback. And if Tua Tagovailoa is truly the future of the Miami Dolphins, McDaniel should be a good hire. I will be interested to see what they do with the defense, though, because one highlight of the Dolphins over the last few years has been their defense. We'll see what they do with that. Dennis Allen with the Saints. The Saints. Ooh, they are kind of in almost for the offseason from hell here. Alvin Kamara, their star running back, he just got arrested. And if these charges are proven with the video evidence that's already been shown, that could be it for him. So, congratulations on lampooning your own career. They have a huge questions at quarterback. Jameis Winston was looking promising until he completely destroyed his knee, and now we don't know how long he'll be out, if he'll even be the same when he comes back. This is his first major injury of his career. It's not good. And then you have, obviously, questions at wide receiver. Michael Thomas is probably leaving. Your team is very young. The defense, as good as it is, a lot of it is aging. They're missing Trey Hendrickson, who left for Cincinnati, obviously. And they're obviously deep in a cap crunch. They're in for a rough offseason. And obviously Sean Payton retired, which kind of made things worse because he was one of the few men that could kind of helm a ship like that. So now, I get why they decided to stay in-house with Dennis Allen. Either they didn't like the candidates that were out there in the market, or maybe they just really, really like Dennis Allen. Now, I don't know about this one, because Allen, if you remember, as Raider head coach, did not do a good job with the Raiders. They would only scrape out a total of the best season they would have with him is a 4-win season. They ended up going 0-4 in 2014, and then he was fired. So I don't know how they'll do this time around. I get why they're sticking in-house. Obviously he knows the locker room. He knows the guys in there. And with the offseason that they're probably in for, I think Mickey Loomis is just trying to find a way to make sure that this thing doesn't go careening off the deep end. But I don't know about this hire. I would have personally gone with an outside hire. We'll see how this goes. But let's just say I'm not exactly, not super high on it. Josh McDaniels. I'm going to do my best to hide my Bronco bias here because I have very bad memories of Josh McDaniels. When the highlight of your coaching tenure is starting out 6-0 and then losing 8 of your final, and then losing 8 games, that is not very good. Remember, 2009, the year they hire him, Broncos start out 6-0, things are looking good, and then the Broncos would go on to lose 8 of their final 10 games, and they ended up finishing the season 8-8 out of the playoffs. The next year they end up going 2-10. They fire Josh McDaniels due to a cheating scandal because he was trying to use some videotape things to record opponents' practices. Then he just wasn't a very good head coach. He wasn't very well liked. If you've heard the stories that have come out of Denver from veterans, they said like everybody was miserable. Some guys considered retiring. Some guys wanted to quit. Everybody wanted out. Like, if you visit Denver or Indianapolis especially, you will not find a person out there with one nice thing to say about Josh McDaniels. Yeah, his offense was good, but that was mostly because you had Tom Brady as your quarterback. If you looked at his coaching tenures outside of Denver where he's calling the plays, the offenses sucked, and they sucked big time. The highest ranked his offense ever was 24th. Not very good. He goes to St. Louis, 32nd, he gets fired. So I don't know how Josh McDaniels is going to do. There have been a ton of swirling rumors that they're going to trade Derek Carr or that they're going to offer Derek Carr an extension. Can we talk about this for a second? How is Derek Carr, what does the man have to do to not have his job in jeopardy year after year? Like, first it was Jack Del Rio, then Gruden, now this guy. Derek Carr just dragged that team to the playoffs, put up great numbers while doing it, and they still want to get rid of him. For what, Jimmy Garoppolo take on his whale of a contract? No, I've heard that they're going to extend him, which in my opinion would make sense. He's your franchise quarterback. I don't know what Josh McDaniels is going to do. I don't trust him as a person. Like, I just think he's very abrasive. I don't know how the assistants are going to feel about him. His offensive style, I just don't know if it's going to work with the Raiders. I don't know. It feels like a really bad hire to me. Feels like a huge gamble, which makes sense. I get it. You're in Vegas. You need to attract people. You need to get people to fill that stadium. Feels like extremely high risk, but I don't know if the reward matches the risk, though. Like, if it's high risk, high reward, I understand it. And there are plenty of those hires in this cycle. Like I say, Nathaniel Hackett, Mike McDaniel, Kevin O'Connell. Guys like that, that's high risk, high reward. This, I don't know too much about. I don't know. This feels like high risk, but I don't know if the reward matches it. I don't know. Feels like a bad hire to me. What we're going to talk about is Luv Smith in Houston. Okay, so the Texans fired David Culley after 1 year. Team goes 4-13. To be fair, it's a lot better than I expected. I thought they were going to go 0-17 because they are so bereft of talent. And you're starting a guy named Davis Mills, a third-round quarterback out of Stanford. I thought Mills played okay. I thought he showed something. A lot of that is due to Pep Hamilton, who I think is a fantastic OC and quarterback coach. And I've been hearing that he's going to stay put in Houston. Good for Davis Mills because I thought their offense played much better than they had any right to. Luv Smith, he's an experienced defensive coach, experienced guy. Been in the NFL a long time. He had a lot of success with the Bears. They ended up going to 2 NFC Championship games under Luv Smith. They went to a Super Bowl under Luv Smith. They won 4 division titles with Luv Smith. The guy has had success. I know he had a bad tenure at Illinois, but the guy's NFL success cannot be denied. He's been around the league a long time. He's well loved by the team. Reportedly, this is a big locker room hire. Now, I did hear the reports that they wanted to hire Josh McCown, whose only coaching experience has been 1 year as a high school head coach, which, I mean, good Lord. At least let him be a quarterback coach before you make him a head coach. Like, at least Zach Taylor was a QB coach at the NFL for a long time before they made him a head coach. Like, come on. I don't get... but the problem is, it just feels like they should have just stuck with Dave Culley. Like, if you wanted to save some money, because the entire staff is staying the same. Luv Smith is going to be the defensive coordinator as well. He's going to call the plays. Defensive assistants stay on. The entire offensive staff is coming back. Why not just keep David Culley? Makes no sense to me. I mean, I think the locker room seemed to like him. It looked like they were good enough to rally around him. It's like how I feel with Josh McDaniels with the Raiders. Like, say what you want about Rich Bisaccia, but that team rallied around that guy. That team should have bottomed out with all the scandals and everything around them with John Gruden and Ruggs, Arnett. They're basically all their secondary being wiped out. And that team should have bottomed out, and Bisaccia got that team. They seemed to love him. He wrote letters to the players. You should have just stuck with him just to keep the locker room together. At least the players seemed to like him. The same goes here. I'm like, I thought the team seemed to rally around Culley all right. Why not just keep David Culley? Why go to Luv Smith? I mean, I got no problem with Luv Smith. It just makes no sense to me. The process doesn't make any sense. I don't get it.
So this is actually post-editing. I just realized I forgot to talk about Brian Dabol. So thankfully, we're going to talk about him right now because I just remembered it. My mistake. But let's talk about Brian Dabol to the Giants. This makes a ton of sense to me. I mean, the Giants have said that they're going to stick with Daniel Jones for one more season, or at least that's what they've said. This could have some Josh Rosen in Arizona vibes where they say, you know, Daniel Jones is a quarterback, but then eventually if they get a chance to take one of these guys in this draft, they probably take their shot. Regardless, it's a good hire because if you are trying to salvage Daniel Jones or develop another young quarterback, why not take the offensive coordinator who developed Josh Allen from a big boom or bust quarterback into an MVP candidate, an elite quarterback? And don't forget, Sean McDermott was a defensive guy in Carolina. Brian Dabol was an offensive guy. So Dabol was the one calling the shots in Buffalo, and their offense was extremely explosive and well written up. A lot of that has to go to Brian Dabol. So I think this is a great hire. I've been pounding the table for Brian Dabol, honestly, since the beginning of the season. I thought the Giants have a great hire, and if you're trying to either salvage Daniel Jones or develop a different quarterback, Brian Dabol, great hire.
The final hire we're going to talk about is, of course, Doug Pederson with the Jags. Good hire. Terrible process getting there. They had a deal for Byron Leftwich, the OC out of Tampa, but reportedly Byron Leftwich, and rightfully so, said he didn't want to work with Trent Baalke, the GM, and makes perfect sense because Trent Baalke is kind of a piece of He's known for being very meddlesome. If you know about what happened in the saga with the 49ers and Jim Harbaugh, that went off the rails real fast. Harbaugh liked the way the team was going. Baalke did not. He kept meddling with the roster when Harbaugh didn't like that. It eventually led to Harbaugh getting fired, and then the Niners tanked after. Then, thankfully, he gets booted, and that led to them getting Lynch and Shanahan. That said, Pederson, in my opinion, just by itself should be a decent hire. I would have preferred that they go with Adrian Wilson as GM and Leftwich as coach. I thought that would have been a home run. But that said, Pederson does have a history of working with young quarterbacks. I think it's a much better hire for Trevor Lawrence. This feels like an actual NFL head coach, leagues better than Urban Meyer. And from the way I've seen it so far, it looks like Trevor Lawrence and Pederson, they're going to get along fine. This should help Lawrence big time. But that said, why are you keeping Trent Baalke? Why? Like, if you know anything what happened about Doug Pederson in Philadelphia, he did not like being told what to do. He did not like being bossed around by Howie Roseman. What do you think's going to happen with Baalke? Given Trent Baalke's tendencies, of course they're going to butt heads. Of course they're not going to get along. This is who Trent Baalke is. You are giving yourselves into it. You better hope that Baalke either can keep his mouth shut or that Doug can adjust, because if this goes south, this was going to go south real fast. I like the hire. I hate the situation, because if Pederson didn't like being bossed around by Howie Roseman, have fun with Trent Baalke. Anyways, that's my opinion on these coaching hires. Obviously, I'm not going to grade them. this was an interesting coaching cycle. Lots of offensive coaches. It's clear that's the new wave across the league. Lots of unknown hires and experienced hires, but when you see guys like Taylor, Shanahan, McVay, obviously, you know, at the end of the day, that's kind of what happens. All head coaches are inexperienced their first time around. It is very rare, you know, a lot of head coaches get their start somewhere. Eventually, every coordinator gets their shot. So, we're going to see what happens here. I'm excited for this cycle. I didn't talk about Nathaniel Hackett. I already talked about that in a separate video, which I'll link in the description below. So, you want my thoughts on the Hackett hire? Go check my video out there. Anyways, that's it for me, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this coaching carousel below. And, yeah, that's it. Time for the NFL offseason. Gonna be crazy to see what happens. Anyways, that's it for me, guys. Love you all. I'll see you guys later.